Hi, this is Daniela Wolf with Bestie Life, the podcast, and this is your community to support you through the little and not so little events that make up your day-to-day life. From the I've got this moments to the I just can't moments. We are here to empower all women to find and develop the skills they need to find peace, balance, and the bliss in their busy. Through solo episodes as well as interviews with amazing women who share their journey and their story and how it works for you. I hope you find the inspirations to make you laugh, think, as well as maybe rethink what you thought you knew, and connect as we realize that we are all living similar ups and downs and don't have to do it alone. So excited for you to hear this episode, and thanks so much for joining me today. Welcome to Bestie Life, helping you find the bliss in your busy. I'm Daniela Wolf, your burnout prevention coach, self-care strategist, licensed social worker. And today I want to dive into something that I'm living through in real time. I want to talk a little bit more about balance. I talk a lot about work-life balance. I talk a lot about the pillars of work-life balance, which I identify as your ability to adapt, pivot, show resilience, and set boundaries. But let's talk about what they really look like in helping you navigate life's inevitable stressors, because it's going to happen when you least expect it. So whether you're juggling work, family, or a new curveball that life's thrown your way, this is the episode for you. Because life has a funny way of throwing us challenges in clusters and bunches, doesn't it? For me, it started with adding a new member to our family, which was an adorable, energetic puppy. And sometimes, people who haven't had puppies think, well, how hard could it be? And it turns out it's very hard, as well as I think we forget it, kind of like we forget how hard having kids can be, which is why we have more sometimes. Having a new puppy, doesn't necessarily always want to sleep through the night, needs constant supervision to avoid accidents, and has completely disrupted the usual kind of flow and rhythm of our household. Granted, I know it's only temporary and it's totally worth it, but it definitely is a change. It's a stressor. Like the other night alone, she was up at 12, 1:45, 3:15, again at 5:30. And like I said, I know this might not seem like much, but personally, I've learned how sleep is truly pivotal in my daily health and well-being. I talk a lot about that as well as one of our self-care pillars, and how much sleep can affect, my mood, ability to cope with other stresses, how we connect with others, how we eat, so much more. So sleep has definitely been a challenge. And then if that wasn't enough, my parents, who came up to visit and have always been very strong and independent, dealt with a very unexpected health issue while they were here. It's been about a month, so suddenly I'm dealing with hospitals, doctor's appointments, medications, and just helping with a lot of other things. So there's been a little bit going on, and instead of spiraling into overwhelm, even though there were so many moments I felt a little close, I've really leaned on those 4 pillars of balance to keep myself grounded. And so I really want to walk you through them and share in real time kind of how they've been helping me, what some of the different ways they've been able to assist me in finding some of that day-to-day balance, as imperfect as it is, how it doesn't look ideal necessarily or what I'm used to, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. So the first area I want to talk about is our ability to adapt, because life rarely goes according to plan, and this is where adaptability really shines. With the puppy, I've definitely had to adjust my schedule completely. What it looks like in the morning, my morning routine, at night, what it's looking like, frequent check-ins, even during the day between either myself or my husband, what it looks like when I walk in the door. I've had to adapt in order to help keep the puppy from having an accident, get out. And instead of resisting that change, which I think sometimes a lot of us can do when we have to break out of what we're used to doing, what our normal routine looks like, I've chosen to embrace that as my new normal, so that now it almost feels weird if I walk in the door and don't do some of those new habits that I started when it came to checking in on the dog and that type of thing. As well as then even with my parents, being present and flexing with their needs It's not even about what I need at that point, but recognizing plans have to get canceled or shifted at the last minute. And again, leaning into a lot of these changes across the board with grace rather than frustration. There's some mindset work with this adaptability, but choosing how to think about those new experiences, how to think about the fact that you're adapting is going to be part of that. So the takeaway is, when life throws you a curveball, really ask yourself, what's one small way that I can adapt? And, sometimes that small way is only shifting your mindset. Other times it's reworking your schedule. Recognizing that flexibility is really going to be your friend in those situations. The next one is looking at how we pivot. And pivoting really takes adaptability a step further. It's about taking broader action and finding a new way forward. So it's not just adapting and continuing on the same road, but looking in a completely different direction, a new way forward. With the puppy again, I've set up zones in my house to help make supervision easier. I've incorporated more walks in the day, which is for them, for me as well, a chance to really get some more fresh air and movement even in the freezing cold, but really, changing the direction of what the goal is. For my parents, this has mean maybe delegating some tasks. My mom's discharge plan had to completely change directions from being in town to being back to out of town and having to leave town with them for several days in order to help them go forward and find a better path in general for them is kind of what it's about. Pivoting isn't about giving up. It's about finding that better path, finding ways to lighten the load. And so, take away if you're thinking about, well, what is pivoting going to look like for you? If something isn't working, finding a new way forward, recognizing it's not failure, it's problem solving. And so sometimes the direction we thought we needed to go on is no longer that path. Pivoting is about letting go of the expectation of that idea of what we thought that path forward was going to look like and coming up with a new plan. As I'm talking, it even reminds me of, after I went through my divorce, going forward, what the holidays looked like. Those expectations were gone. They had to come up with a new plan. Being able to let go of different expectations is key when you're trying to pivot. So finding that way for you, what, again, part of your mindset do you need to work on? What's the story you're telling yourself? Is it true? Is it helpful? And how can you work with that or let it go in order to move forward? That third pillar is resilience. When resilience, I always talk about, is your ability to bounce back when things get tough, because life will always get tough. We will always have hard moments. It's about not unpacking and staying there. And so with both the situations I've had going on, I've had moments where I've absolutely felt completely drained, completely at my wit's end. But resilience isn't about, not feeling tired or stressed. It's about finding ways to recharge and keep going, even with some of those stressors. And so for me, this has meant leaning on my support systems, taking some short breaks to reset, and reminding myself that these tough moments in life are temporary. It's not always going to be the long-term situation. There's a kind of cliche quote, this too shall pass. And to remind ourselves of those things, anything that we're going through doesn't mean it has to be our permanent state of being. And so the takeaway, your resilience grows when you give yourself permission to rest and recharge during the hard times, during just the day-to-day life, which is why I talk about, doing practical, daily, sustainable self-care throughout every single day. Because when you give yourself that permission to rest and recharge is how you're able to do the things you need to do from a place not of lack, but of feeling like you're capable, of feeling like I've got this, I can do these things. And so I want you to think of what's one small thing you can do today to refill your cup. And there's so many different ways this can look like, different options. Doesn't have to take a lot of time. Sometimes it can be just a 1-minute self-care practice. It can be 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. There's different ways, inside, outside, alone, and with others. And I have other podcasts I will leave in the show notes below to help you look at self-care, how to incorporate these different self-care practices. So Look at the show notes for the links on some podcasts and blog posts to reference if you're not sure of where to start or where to begin, as well as always, please reach out to me if you have a question about these things. I love being able to help support you on your journey, answer some of those questions, and give you that starting point to help you on your way towards finding that balance. And the last area of that balance is going to be your boundaries. And boundaries have been critical for maintaining my sanity. Definitely carving out small pockets of time for myself, whether it's from my family, from the dog, just finding that time has been key just so that I can take a breath and a moment for myself. Knowing your own limits and communicating them. I've learned to say, I can't do this alone, and asking for help when I need it. And it's not always easy, but that's a boundary sometimes to recognize, to protect yourself by asking for help. I think so many times we can see that vulnerability of asking for help as a weakness when actually it's a strength to know that we're going to show up better and stronger together when we have that self-help and support. And so that takeaway for you is to know that boundaries aren't always about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to yourself and saying yes to what you need. And so to think of where can you set a boundary that's going to really protect your time and your energy. And these don't have to be big blocks of time. It doesn't always have to be a no, but putting that space in place for yourself is going to be so important in showing up for everybody else. So to kind of put it all together in this micro episode, here's the thing. Life is always going to have its challenges and its stressors. Whether for me it's a sleepless puppy or unexpected caregiving responsibilities, challenges in life are inevitable. But by leaning on these different pillars of balance, my adaptability, my ability to pivot, building in those resilience and those boundaries can really help navigate those stressors without losing yourself in the process. And so I really don't just talk about these pillars and these different things, but I practice them myself because they're the foundation of all the work I do with my clients. And I wouldn't talk about them, I wouldn't recommend them if they weren't things that I didn't truly believe in and embrace and do myself. I share about them in my book, Balance Breakthrough, because I want you to have the tools in whatever way works best for you to help you start to implement these strategies. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or out of balance, I want you to first and foremost know you are not alone in this journey. And there are definitely practical steps you can take today to start finding your footing. And if today's episode resonated with you, I encourage you to pick one of the pillars we talk about and really focus on it this week. So whether that's how you're adapting, how you're pivoting, how you're finding resilience, or putting those boundaries into place, just pick one and see what you can start to do differently. And if you need help figuring out where to start, like I said, you can look in my book, Balance Breakthrough. You can hop on a call with me. Either way, we can help you dive deeper into those strategies and really see how to help you apply them to your life. That book, Balance Breakthrough, Practical Guide for Busy Professionals to Take Charge of Their Work Life and Well-Being, is available on Amazon. Just put in my name or Balance Breakthrough. You can find it there. And as always, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what's one stressor you're navigating right now and how you're using these pillars to tackle it. You can send me a message or connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, as well as just thank you so much for spending time with me today, listening to kind of what's going on, and hopefully you were able to find one takeaway to be able to help you with some of your own life stressors. Remember, balance is possible. You just have to take it one step at a time. So until next time, take care of yourself, and thanks so much. Thanks so much again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know any questions or comments that you have. Also, if you can please leave an Apple 5-star review so that this episode can be shared with more women. There's 2 quotes that I love. Alone we may be strong, but together we are stronger, as well as when women support each other, incredible things happen. So let's be stronger and incredible together, as well as maybe just have some fun along the way. Thanks so much and talk to you soon. Bye.